quite disturbing to see how big tech and AI in big tech is doing good, but at the same time evil as well.
Originally, it was not meant for a bomb. It was meant for fueling industries. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, this brought humans to use a potentially disruptive, groundbreaking invention as a mass destruction tool.
Name one sector that you would double down on for the next 5 years.
There are many, but if I really could use one which is very critical, very strategic, I would look at the water management.
I expected everything was not water management. One thing that Giorgio needs to remove right now in order to grow as a person, as a human.
Listen more.
Can't, no, you're Italian.
Talk
Italiano,
much, please, within the Khalij, the GCC, where I want to live and I want to raise my children.
Which you don't have yet.
Which I don't have yet.
What is your $1 billion or $1 trillion company idea? It must be water.
Yeah, it must be water.
My name is Mohammed Chbib. I spent the last 25 years building and scaling companies in Europe, in the Middle East. I have raised over 200 million. I've created sales in excess of $1 billion. I've learned, I've scaled, I've failed. I met enough people in my business life and in my private life to be able to see who will shape the future of the region. Here's my promise. I won't waste your time. I will ask questions no one else dares to ask or even thinks about asking. And I'll provide a seat at the table with those people that I believe will shape the future of our region to make it a great and successful Arabia again. My guest today is a perfect example of that. He's Italian. He's Muslim. Of all the places on this planet, he decided to move from beautiful Italy to beautiful Doha in Qatar. And that's the best, he's ranked number 2 globally as an Italian with followership just right after the Italian Prime Minister. My guest is Giorgio Torre today. Ahlan wa sahlan, Giorgio. Amazing to have you here.
Assalamu alaikum. Shukran wajid, Mohammed.
Salam. So that's the crazy part. I'm going to go straight to it now because the answer shows me that you're not the typical Italian. So I know you've been an atheist. You adopted Islam. You even moved to Qatar, to Doha of all the places. Give us a little bit of roundup what drove you and how your family took it.
Yeah, that's a truly crazy story. It started, like you said, I was atheist before, and I was in constant look for truth, predominantly in a more rationalistic domain. And subhanAllah, one day I found myself in a library. I was looking for a book of astrophysics, and I found myself this book in Italian, Il Corano, and I was attracted by the calligraphy. It was quite interesting. I took this book, I opened it. I was reading Surah Al-Fatiha, and I was attracted by the feeling. I felt something pulling me toward the book. Therefore, I moved to the cashier area. I purchased the book. I went out and I said, why did I buy this book? I'm an atheist. What am I doing with this? Again, subhanAllah, number 2, I went home. I started to read Surah Al-Baqarah, and I felt this impression that in that book, there were the answers to everything I was looking for.
How old were you?
This was like 6 years ago, so I was 20, 23, 24. And I basically found answers that I was always looking for in astrophysics book, in mathematics books. And the first impression that I had of the Quran was, this is a scientific treaty. It's a book of biology, physics, mathematics, chemistry. So I had the same feeling coming from a rationalistic background. Therefore, as a fundamentalist of rationalism, I decided, okay, by heart, I might be Muslim, but by brain, by rationality, I still be convinced. So I was very tough into the decision. I said, the only way for me to decide this is the right decision, I need to go through the study of all the religions. I did not know almost anything about Christianity as well, to be honest. We were all nominal Christians in the West. Therefore, I started to study very deeply the Jewish Tanakh, the Talmud. I started to study the Injil, what we call Injil, which is now has been subject to many literal alterations, and the Christian Bible, the different many versions, the Quran, the history of Islam. And therefore, I took a rational decision in saying, okay, this is my religion because this is exactly what makes sense from the literal point of view. And just allow me a correction. Today, I never say, I believe in God. Today, I say, I know there is God. It's a little bit like when you take a look to a mathematical theorem, you don't You don't have an opinion. You don't develop. I think, I believe, this is the conclusion, or it's not subject to interpretation. It's there, it's written, and it's absolutely unconfutable. So that's from a rationalistic point of view.
Wow, you simplified the explanation. You know what I find totally crazy? When I was 16, I think the first war in Iraq started. And ever since then, the evil in the world, at least in the Hollywood world, turned from Soviet Union towards Muslims. So given this negativity about this region, about this religion, in the midst of this time, you decided to adopt this religion. And I think you were still in Italy back then. How? How do you dare even? And how did your family take it? How did your friends take it?
I will tell you more. Those were also the years of, if you remember, the terrorist attacks at the Bataclan in France, in Belgium. Obviously, of obvious, not Muslim, real metrics, and not of origin source, obviously. But I think this pushed. This has the opposite effect, right? It does not bring people far from Islam. Just like for any topic, when you speak something bad or evil about any single topic, this pushes automatically, curious people to know more. So I know personally many people from my city, from Napoli. I'm originally from the south of Italy, a little town called Torre del Greco, all across the sea. And I know personally people who actually embrace Islam from different cultural backgrounds. We're talking about entrepreneurs, people working in humble environments, even people imagine coming out of jail. So you say, oh, this guy has no future. But those people became wonderful people.
And the West always says, yeah, of course, when you're desperate and when you're hopeless, you're always receptive and open to the bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they standard say.
Yeah, exactly. And so,
were you so desperate?
I think in the search of truth, for sure, in the search of purpose, and this was even affecting my happiness. So I was generally not happy. I was almost falling in depression because of that. I know it sounds a little bit silly, the classical Western cliche. Oh, you guys are wealthy, so you have time to become, sad and depressed because of that. But that was a real deal, and Islam has been the medicine for that. It's been the simplest and yet the most powerful cure to that today.
Wow, that's impressive, really. And then you come here. Why did you decide Doha? Is the like of all the places? Probably my first thought in Europe would probably be Cairo, because it's big and it's it's Egypt. It's something that you learn in school. Even when you learn about the Arabic code, you learn about the ancient Egyptians, right? You don't learn about the good face. I remember they called it the dark medieval times in Germany. I don't know. Is it in Italy? Is it the same?
Yeah, el medioevo. Yeah.
They don't talk about it. Dark medieval times is when the Muslims were in Vienna and in Spain.
Well, I usually used to define when Christianity took over the medieval time, but I think because of Islam, the West kind of detached itself from obscurantism. It's not about religion, of course. Christianity itself played an important role in the West when it comes to art, when it comes to philosophy, because they were the main founders of the great masterpieces of Michelangelo, Botticelli, the greatest artists. But at the same time, pushed the masses and people, even philosophers, to embrace this nihilism, this relativistic nihilism in the West, where everything is potentially true, right? You don't have no right to criticize if it's wrong. So there is no criteria. And subhanAllah, we have that. And we call the Quran the Furqan for a very specific reason.
Wow. And then Doha. So I interrupted you.
And then Doha.
I'm interested in that story.
Yeah,
Why
that
Doha?
Yeah. Going back that, because actually it's Doha kind of that chosen me. I was looking for the GCC. So the story started way before, 6 months before I was in Bahrain. So my very first taste of the GCC lifestyle, environment, even the culture. I never met in my life a person from the Khalij, even from the Shami. I have so many friends from the North Africa and Italy because it's geographically the closest area. I know it sounds weird, but I became kind of addicted to the GCC lifestyle. And I don't mean the materialistic part. I mean the genuine happiness of living here without worrying that someone is going to steal your wallet, someone is going to enter your home, someone is going to shoot you or your children, someone is going to impose you that there are 97 genders. So I want to find a place where there are only 2 types of toilets, for men and for women, not other genders. I did not want to be... I know that many people might be...
Yeah, this is at the moment not popular.
This is not very popular. I don't criticize, I don't judge anyone. the last person who can judge. I have many defects myself, but I embrace a kind of philosophy for me and what I see. For
You have a clear opinion.
Yeah.
And it's fine to stand for it.
So the story started in Bahrain. I got a job in Bahrain in a venture capital firm. I was handling the digital part and the business part. I came back to Europe. I decided, no, I need to go back. I started to build my LinkedIn presence. And I said, I don't want to share my CV to people that don't know me. It's not going to be effective. So let me build the credibility first so that I can build on that. A network, digital, purely network. And I got my job in KPMG in Qatar. So I started to work into the strategy consulting. And this was my very first approach with Qatar. And I realized that, okay, this is exactly the place within the Khalij, the GCC, where I want to live and I want to raise my children.
Which you don't have yet.
Which I don't have yet.
Okay.
Very soon. Work in progress.
Work in progress. Very good. And then you learned Arabic even. I mean, honestly, like, not having a religion, studying religions, adopting a religion, moving culturally to a completely different place. I mean, I think Italy is probably the closest that it can get next to Spain and probably Greece to a certain degree, to the Arab world as it could get. But you changed location, you changed the way of living,
Yeah.
and then you adopted the language as well. I mean, when you said when you greeted me earlier before we recorded, I was like, what? It's even Khaliji dialect, so it's really amazing. How did that come? Was it a purpose decision?
So, as Italians, we truly believe in the power of connection between people.
Mm-hmm.
So, the first act of respect toward the place that is giving you an opportunity is, I'm here not out of a financial need. Alhamdulillah, Italy is a very wealthy country, although Europe, like we were discussing, is a very bad shape. But I'm here because of an emotional / if you want, philosophical decision. So the first act of gratefulness toward this country is, first of all, to learn the local language. And this also helps me to break the barrier with the locals. I want to communicate with people in their own language, and I want to people be surprised by that, because it's a sign of respect toward them, toward their culture, which, like you said, is very similar to the Italian culture. So if you break it down in the good and in the bad, is very similar to the culture of my city, Napoli. So many times also in the bad part.
Yeah, I know. But you feel like 100% accepted in Qatar now? Like
absolutely.
Sometimes you have local friends or only expats?
I would say 90% of my friends are Qataris.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
It's difficult to enter the circle in a friendly, like work-wise, it's not difficult?
Look, I always, the Qataris are very, so they give you the heart in general.
Yes.
So
Once they open it.
So they have rightfully this initial filter, because let's be honest, they represented the minority of the population.
And everyone is after their money.
Exactly. Everyone is coming here. Everyone could potentially be a scammer. And there are unfortunately several cases of people from all over the world. It's obvious that you build a filter. You must build that. You must defend yourself. But once that barrier is open, and you ensure that you're a truthful person, you're trustworthy, you want to generally be a friend, you want to offer value to people, they give you 1 times more than what you offer. So that's so beautiful. And rarely I found people like the Qataris.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like I've seen all the GCC countries from inside, and I don't have a preference, I would say. But I can tell you that despite them being all the same, ultimately, like Bilad al-Sham, I mean, this region, this Arabian Peninsula is pretty much the same type of people, different tribes, but they have this tibe, what we call tibe, all of them, but still they have their own spleens, they have their own kind of things.
But that's the beauty of the local dimension of the culture, right? They should be preserved.
True. Amazing. You work in the field of AI here in the region. You are actually a voice of AI, as we said, like you're one of the top voices of AI. Now, for me as an Arab and Muslim by birth, as I say, it's quite disturbing to see how big tech and AI in big tech is doing good, but at the same time evil as well, and not being held accountable. You obviously saw the Microsoft worker that has stood up at this 25-year celebration and spoke up. What does it make with someone like you that has chosen this for himself and then sees what's unfolding, You work in this space as well. I'm pretty sure you come across all these technologies. You've been very outspoken with backlashes firing at you. So how do you deal with that? What do you think?
Yeah, so I would take a step back and look at history. An Italian scientist, Enrico Fermi, a nuclear physicist, discovered that there was a possibility of releasing an immense quantity of energy out of nuclear reactions. Out of that, many studies brought to the opportunity to use nuclear as potential source of energy. Originally, it was not meant for a bomb. It was meant for fueling industries. But unfortunately, given the circumstances, this brought humans to use a potentially disruptive, in a positive way, groundbreaking invention as a mass destruction tool and killed hundreds of thousands of people at the mere impact in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We are not even considering the people that died.
The long aftermath.
After.
Yeah.
Today, AI is the same, basically, and we can look at different angles and different dimensions. One is on the geopolitical level. AI is today a purely geopolitical tool in the hands of powers that leverage those, let's say, as strategic assets. So today, countries...
As strategic assets or as strategic assets against others?
Here
right?
we go to
I mean,
the
that one is intention.
Exactly. When we talk about this, we are also talking about the defense part. When I say strategic, we are talking about, obviously, importantly, the data of citizens, the companies, the governmental services. But when we go deeper in the more sensitive and niche areas, we are talking about defense. We are talking about UAV, unmanned vehicles, drones, basically, equipped with weaponry. We are talking about F-35s in the case of the US, or the Su-57 in the case of Russia, or anti-missile defense systems, S-400s. Many of them today are fully integrated with AI. Therefore, who owns that technology can either turn on it or turn off. For example, if I'm a country A importing from a country B that is a producer, manufacturer of those technologies, country A detains my military sovereignty just because they detain the sovereignty on my AI assets. So they can decide when I can use my assets for defense or not. Moving even forward, this can be used for offense. So we are in the era of cyber and AI warfare. So this is where, as usual, the civilians pay the highest price. And whether it's in Sudan, whether it's in Palestine, whether it's in Brazil, everywhere, people suffer because of experimentations. And let's remind, by the way, this use of AI on civilians all around the globe is in the phase of testing. There are people who are deciding to train the model on individuals. We are not talking about deployment of a technology. We are talking about a training phase, just like you have a data set. But instead of data, you have children. That's the scariest part.
Yeah. Yeah, look, this AI thing and training on people, what worries me is that 40 years ago, when I remember I was a kid, 30 years ago even, people were going on the street against cameras being installed in the city center for security reasons.
Yeah.
And now people are giving up their children, their own data, photos. Every guy or girl posts like photos and videos of their children, even of their unborn children. And all this data feeds all these platforms that are owned by some few that I personally don't trust. It's crazy. It's crazy. So how do we, and then you have people like Elon Musk developing chips that they will implant in humans, which is more data even at a more substantial level. Plus, my theory is there will be an on-off button for the human at the end of the day. What do you think of these developments, looking deep behind the curtains?
So two areas here to say. So first of all, we need a system of governance, and most importantly, to decentralization of AI. And when I say decentralization of AI, I just don't mean some buzzwords around the blockchain, but simply decentralize the computational power, data, and capabilities at worldwide level of AI. Like you say, if you take open...
Do you mean decentralized or do you mean commoditize on a global scale?
Both, potentially both. Also potentially localize and empower the users and the real owners of this data. They can potentially monetize if they want to share those data. But the critical aspect here is to understand, is to avoid that the few people are in possess of the AI muscle, let me say it this way. Take, for example, OpenAI, take DeepSeek, take every other providers. Now, either every nation develops its own champions, and then it becomes this super ministry of AI administrating data capabilities.
Quite expensive as well.
Quite expensive. And here is also where the GCC can support countries, of course, but the concept is that we don't want, like you say, we don't want few individuals to attain this. The second part is that I would say is a break-even point or in an inflationary model where we see that the capabilities of AI, the intelligence goes up. Now, so far we thought that AI, the intelligence of an AI model, LLM, is a function of how much compute is there and how much energy is input. And now we're understanding that even the scaling law, the Moore law, it does not work anymore. So it's now about changing the paradigm of both the hardware and the software part. But all of this to say what? That will eventually lead to a super intelligent AI, super aware AI. Is not, it's not fantascientific. It's not something like a cartoon or or something incredible, but it's going to happen sooner or later. Now, the question is, are we prepared in terms of governance for that moment? Are we going to reach that? It's going to be gradual, of course. But most importantly, how are we, what is our backup plan? Fine, we are going to Mars in the case something wrong might happen here with AI. But what is the long-term plan? What is our strategy? What do we do? Not only as a nation, as a globe. I think this is a globe urgency. It's not just a nation urgency. And now we're in the phase where we believe it's just geopolitical. We believe that there is a competition between China and US. And we are still closing that bubble where we think, okay, this is going to affect just our military capabilities. Where is the ontological perspective? What is the human perspective in all of this? Because that then is independent by the nations.
When you want a global perspective, the first thing that comes to my mind is the United Nations. And they have proven to be ineffective because they're in the hand of a few, right? That have national interests, or at best aligned national interest between 2 or 3 or 4 nations. That's it, right? So I'm not really, I don't, let's put it that way. This whole show is about how to make Arabia great and successful and rising again. And one of my hypotheses is it's not going to be politics. So whatever there is in AI, I don't think politics will solve it. I don't think the policymakers have neither the vision nor the power to solve such a global issue. I think it must be much more grassroots, and I think it must be much more technology-driven to solve it. Because regulations always lead to backdoors that open up and people abusing these regulations either way. In that context, when you want to really drive a development that is unstoppable, and I think AI and whatever comes after AI is unstoppable, nations like Saudi Arabia and UAE and also Qatar are investing heavily. We're talking, I don't know what numbers, but I think we're now arrived at the trillions in national AI strategies, investing in technology providers outside, buying technology providers, etc. So this strategy of investment into these technologies, wherever they emerge, is that a way of, capturing value for this region and bringing it into this region? And let's assume we have better morals and better ethics for the sake of it. Would that lead to a better future of AI for the region, from within the region, in your opinion?
Not necessarily, because it starts way before, I think. Everything starts with a vision, right? So, for example, the case of Dubai and Abu Dhabi in the UAE, this is probably one of the best examples in setting up strategies for 15 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years. For the centenary, I think the latest one for the UAE. After that comes the implementation part. The implementation part, we need to look at layers. We need to look at the very layers of AI, which is the infrastructure layer, then you got the cloud, you have the data centers, then you got the LLMs, and then you got the application layers. All of this, like I mentioned before, is matter of, I would say, national interest in the sense that impacts the life of people, impacts the life of companies and governmental services. In an environment where you want to foster entrepreneurship, innovation, like the GCC wants, and wants to rise as the global pole of innovation and bring back the golden past of the Arab world, the public sector must necessarily act as a facilitator, not as a controller, not as an intruder, but just as a facilitator. The public sector ideally should knock at the door of the private sector and say, how can I make your life easier? How can I make it faster for you? How can I facilitate? What do you need? Funding? What do you need? regulations? Do you need connection? Do you need a demand that is generated? I think it starts from there. And then everything will happen in cascade. Is a domino effect. Let me take you the example of Qatar. Qatar has a very little known but incredible set of incentives for companies. I personally talk with dozens of companies every week. Many of them have relocated here. I'm in contact with them. I supported them into the relocation. And I know that many of them got incubated or accelerated, in certain cases both. So there are incentives. I believe it's QDB, Qatar Development Bank, and also Startup Qatar through the fund of funds, the $1 billion fund. Startups can relocate here at zero cost, no need of registration, can get funding, can get support, free advertisement, free advisors, free office. Even the house of the founders where they technically will live, it's for free. So,
tell me how I get there.
no, I mean that's great. But the point to respond to your question is on the other side. How can you empower those startups? Fine, you gave everything possible to make them come here.
But that's probably also from a competitive perspective, right? I need to be more attractive than Saudi Arabia or UAE, which are my main competitors here.
Yeah, but the problem is you ideally want that startup to participate in the market, right? Whether it's a Qatari or a non-Qatari startup, but the most important thing is that there must be a demand, and the demand in a market dominated by 90% by the public sector means necessarily collaboration between public and private, which means that in the RFPs there must be some mandatory clause encouraging the ministries and the semi-governmental entities to allocate a certain percentage of it to local Qatari startups. For example, I'm taking the case of Qatar, but can be extended.
Yeah.
Now, I think the country that is closest to this model, I think, is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is very close to that. I think Bahrain as well. But I think it's a model that can be replicated all around. So with the incentives framework of Qatar, which are, I think, among the best, and the approach of Saudi Arabia when it comes to generate the demand, which not necessarily, like you say, must go to Google, Microsoft, Oracle, with all the due respect, but I think empowering a local economy and deploying and delivering a tangible effect on the local ecosystem passes through giving opportunity to young, talented startups. Give them the opportunity to be wrong. Take some little risk on non-critical scope. And I know many talented Qataris with startups which would deliver almost for free just to have an opportunity. But unfortunately, they do not have that because it's a philosophy of relationship between the public and the private sector. And I think Qatar, from this point of view, just like the rest of the GCC, has an immense potential. Once done that, to respond to your question, we have a flourishing and stronger ecosystem that will act as a natural gravitational point for all the globe. Because now it's where everything happens is basically here. So funding, policies, ease of making business, demand. So,
if you take that further, how do you think this regional strength will develop over the next 6 to 12 years in attracting actually? And I see that myself in my own network. I think in the last year, I know 200 people by name that moved into this region, coming from Europe predominantly, but also from the US now. Like, probably say in the last 3 months, I've how do you think this gravitas that has been built over the last couple of years, especially after COVID, I think, will evolve in the next 6 to 12 years? And what is the risks here?
So, how will evolve? I think highly depends on how this conversation between the public sector and the private sector will start and will be engaged. But I think on the long run, we are moving towards slowly, but we are moving toward that model. So ideally, we will be a purely demand-driven approach to the market from startups and other entities. And the demand is facilitated by the government. So the government says, we need let's make sure that this scope is delivered at least partially by the local entities. Now, the risks are merely operational, can be reputational if, for example, one of the companies has, unfortunately, a negative impact on the delivery of a scope. But if, like I mentioned, those deliveries do not include the critical scope, the fundamental scope, I don't think we have major risks to consider here. And the risk is worth it, the action. So, or the other way around, the action is worth it, the risk.
True. Let's generalize a little bit more, because I'm interested to talk about innovation in general in the Arab world, not only AI innovation, but in general here in the region. Because because everyone celebrates himself and herself here in the region. If you look at the startup scene, it's always self-celebration of every little tiny thing is celebrated. What is the one thing that you would eliminate? Let's say you take a sledgehammer, you're allowed to destroy one thing and rebuild it. What would it be in the entire startup ecosystem?
So two things, if you allow me.
Of course, destroy.
1+1. One is, like I was mentioning, this. So the culture of the failure. By the way, there is a better culture of the failure in the GCC rather than in Italy. I think in Italy we are way, 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 way worse. Once you fail once, you are labeled for life. As
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately.
But it's the same here, no? It's
No,
taboo to fail.
I mean, not that much, because now in a more capitalistic society, but most important, very dynamic, like the GCC, the lessons learned from China and US are coming here, and so it's a kind of digested, is embedded now in the new generation. Therefore, what happens today is that obviously I would like to eliminate this culture of, so to reach success you need to fail a couple of times. All the unicorns founders have failed at least 3, 4, 5 more times. Every failure brings you closer to the success, because every failure, if taken properly, is a lessons learned. This is one thing that I would eliminate, because I think can really enable and empower many, many founders. And the second one is more, like you say, has to do with the PR part. So I would say to concentrate more action and more dedication and more effort on the actual doing other than PR. And by the way, I don't want to look like an hypocrite because I built my branding on the PR.
Oh man, you took my question away. I was about to say, you of all the people, the ranked guy on LinkedIn, the ranked guy globally on AI, you have the most, second most followers after your prime minister, Italian actually. So you say don't like build PR?
Yeah, PR is a very fundamental part, marketing, the self-awareness.
But it should not be the
brand.
Purpose.
Exactly, it's just the mean, it's not the ultimate goal, right? So it's your vehicle that takes you there. You can use leverage a lot of PR, but the most important thing is that it is linked and is backed by real tangible work and results. So I would say probably, yeah, raise the standard of what deserves PR and what not.
One of the things that I have as a theme actually when I speak publicly is we have a group of 2 billion people worldwide that are at least joined by one religious theme, and they have specific pain points. Unlike other religions, like Muslims have pain points in tourism, for example, that are not covered. They have pain points in food that are not covered, etc. So we could address these things. So, because you're a creative guy, right? You're in tech, you're not allowed to use the word artificial intelligence. Name one sector that you would double down on for the next 5 years.
A very good question. I think there are many, but if I really could use one which is very critical, very strategic, I would look at the water management. Water management is quite interesting because we are lacking.
Again, you shocked me. Sorry to interrupt you. I expected everything was not water management.
But
amazing.
That's critical. Just consider Qatar relies for 90% of its water reserves on desalinized water, which is also energy intensive, which is also CO2 or GHG emissions intensive, or in Arabic, الانبعاثات ثاني أكسيد الكربون. This is important because whoever finds solution for that is going to be the next $1 trillion company, not billion, $1 trillion company. There is water scarcity. We're going toward challenging times. Temperature is rising, whether we believe it or not, whether we believe we are the cause or not. But I think this is something that innovation can play a role, not only regionally, but globally. Because Muslims, as a ummah, across all the nations, I think what we generally lack is a sense of unity in the purpose and in the role we want to play in the history. We don't really have it. We come from a golden story, but we don't see and we don't analyze and we don't put enough emphasis on who we want to be in the history and who do we want to become. We don't really have that. We think as individuals. We think at our life, our career, our investments, but we don't really see ourselves fitting in the history and placing a role. We are not playing a role in our ambitions as a Muslim ummah. I'm not talking about a specific country. Is as a corpus, we need to deliver impact as a corpus, as a unity, as a unicum within the ummah, and understand what is our purpose in the world, which is a question that we sooner or later will need to ask, because we knew what was our purpose before at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We knew what was right after. We kind of lost it. We don't know what.
How do we get this back? Because if you honestly, like, if you just look at the GCC, within UAE there's a digital strategy. For Dubai there's a digital, for Abu Dhabi, for the other Emirates. Within Qatar there is a national digital strategy as well. We have tariff systems that are different per country. We have currencies that are different per country. We have, how do we unify the ambition if the practical things are not even being discussed?
If we look at the history, I think I always respond to questions looking at the history. I never try to deduct by myself. So if we look at the patterns, is a combination of factors. One of it is obviously to create something groundbreaking that attracts the attention of the world. So obviously, like you were mentioning, an innovation or an ecosystem that becomes the global center of gravity. Therefore, here we are in a new golden age of the Arabs. But it's not enough. There must be also an external challenge that brings us naturally together. And this is probably a common challenge. I don't know.
What more challenges?
Space exploration.
What
can
more
be
challenges?
Water. I mean, like beyond even the human domain. So something that brings us by force together in considering, you know what, we should have a common currency, whether it's a digital currency or a physical one. We should have a common AI framework, or you should have a common business framework, registration, or a space exploration agency which is common to the GCC. And then let's bring Turkey together. Let's bring Indonesia. Let's bring, I don't know, Egypt. So I think, once again, innovation, science, and knowledge could be the real weapon of the Arab world, Arab and Muslim world, because that's what knowledge, literature, astronomy, and poetry, this is what empowered the Arabs in the old times. So what best weapons other than this?
Unity and education. I think these are the two things that I would... Unity and education leads to innovation with ambition. That's kind of the link that I do. When you're curious, when you're educated, and you see what impact things could have in the future if you don't address them. So education to be able to recognize challenges before they occur.
Yeah.
Right. And the wisdom and the unity to collectively work towards these ambitions. I think that's...
But then you have the Aristotle's paradox, right, of the chicken and the egg, because like education is
What comes first? Interesting, really. I think honestly, we have great times ahead of us, great challenging times ahead of us in this region, and it's important that these things get addressed together. And one way that you have mentioned is you need to have visibility, right? And speaking to someone who understands this, my question that I'm interested in, really also for our show viewers and our listeners, is when you start from scratch on LinkedIn and you're on the first 50 to 100 followers, how do you build an audience and followership that really allows you to have impact in the future? And how long do you think does it take? Take us on your own private journey, maybe, on how you build momentum.
So it's a very interesting question, and allow me to open an excursus. I know I talk so much, but I love to give a context. I constantly receive inquiries from directors, partners, senior leadership stakeholders from big tech, MBBs, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and those professionals ask me, how can I build my personal brand? So among my services that I offer through LinkedIn there is the personal branding strategy. And the most important thing is, the first question is, say, how willing and how badly you want that? Because that's the very first question. Do you see it as a passive activity like trading on cryptos, like something that does by itself, or you want to strive for that? You want to sacrifice time of your day for that? The second thing that I say is that you need to be ready to understand this is not a full-time, but definitely a part-time activity. It takes 2 to 3 hours a day. So if you don't have the time, try to build an alternative way. Otherwise, there is no way you can build faster a brand. Now, how you can build that is matter of focusing on your niche audience, understanding what is your expertise, who do you want to be. You want to be an influencer, you want to be a thought leader, you want to be an entrepreneur who wants to sell and wants to market his idea. Based on that, you start deploying and delivering content that is beneficial and fruitful for everyone for free. Now we are in the new era of marketing. Now the marketing with cold emails and sending ad hoc requests. When I see someone, hi, nice profile, I would like to present you my solution, I just block.
Report and block.
Yeah, report and block.
Classic.
Does not work. Does not work because you need to offer value. To catch the attention of someone, you need to deliver some value. And this value is also the new business development. I call it the business development 2.0. I published on my LinkedIn many decks about sustainability, Web3, AI, geopolitics, many things, because I truly believe in the power of sharing knowledge, which I think is something we as a Muslims in general, we should also encourage. This brought clients to me without me performing 1 day of business development. Does not mean that I did not invest time and effort. I invested probably more time and effort, but I conveyed it differently. I just spent time in delivering value. Because if you deliver value that is for free, and a government thinks, wait a second, these consulting companies just charge us $500,000 or $1 million for the same deck, for the same document, and the guy just published on LinkedIn, we would have rather copied what he wrote. And so let me follow this guy. He's a thought leader. The next time that they need something like this, they will reach out to you. So the psychological life cycle happens exactly like this. There are moments where your growth might not be up to your expectations. So you're tempted to give up. You're tempted to say, oh, khalas, it's not going to work. But sometimes it's just a matter of consistency, like for everything in life. Personally, it took me about 3 years to reach from 0 to 131,000 today followers and 60 million views. But it's not by chance, it's not by luck or whatever. Everyone can do that.
It's hard work. At the end of the day, it's hard work.
The equation is this. So
day and night.
Exactly. Amount of work, multiply time, result. Is as linear as you might imagine. So I'm nothing special. I'm nothing. Everyone can do probably even better than me. But the thing is, are you willing to be consistent? That's where I can say historically 90% of people in every sector, every industry, in every aspect of life lack. Everyone has the brute force of doing things, but not everyone has the endurance.
Yeah, I was saying not everyone is Cristiano Ronaldo. The guy is the world's best.
Yeah.
Or maybe the second, and he still practices free kicks every day.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
That's
unbelievable.
That's discipline.
But this is inside. This is intrinsic motivation that you cannot train.
Correct.
Like either you have it or you don't have it.
But both.
So why did you choose LinkedIn?
Well,
because I think this is your biggest platform, right?
Yeah, I deleted.
You don't do anything, yeah.
Except no, I deleted all my private social media. It was not a good idea to have them. I deleted I never used so much, but I used to have Instagram. I used to have X, and I used to have Facebook at the time. Now it's X. No, it's called Meta, I think. I deleted them all, and I just use LinkedIn. And now I recently opened up a channel on YouTube. But that's because it provides, although not always true, a natural filter of the quality of the conversations. So instead of seeing insults and random topics thrown in the comments, at least there is a minimum level. Not always, not unfortunately, not always, but at least the filter is a little bit stricter than Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever, all this social media.
Interesting. I think that's interesting for people. I'm not a big fan of all these other channels as well. I've been using LinkedIn, and I have one problem with that, not with LinkedIn specifically, but with any platform. And I think it's like the AI discussion that we had earlier. At one point, someone can turn the switch, and it happened quite a few times for you because you said things that people don't like, and then you're gone. And then it requires a mechanism, efforts, sometimes lawyers to get you back online, because at the end of the day, it's a source of income,
Correct.
right? And when someone decides that the source of income is taken away from you, it's sort of blackmailing to control opinions, to control freedom of speech, to control, and so on. Now, I'm not going to ask you what you went through emotionally when these things happened, because I think you handled it also just straightforward, like heads on. What is the alternative for us? That is my more interesting question.
Always the same is technologically sovereignty. Just like for any aspect of the industry, we need sovereignty as a ummah. We need sovereignty between us, and we can build that together. That's the best part, but it's also the most challenging part, because historically, whoever tried to build that, did not live enough to tell that, unfortunately. So technologically, sovereignty is crucial, and it starts from the very infrastructure. You can even build your Muslim LinkedIn, but then it relies on a foreign cloud or a cloud that is hostile to you. Still, the engine can be turned off. So for the first time since the globalization, probably, nations are genuinely started to think in terms of localizing technology, nationalizing. And I think this goes beyond religion and beyond even the Islamic Ummah. So it's something that is a necessity for us. So, and I think today for every country, until to the point in 60, 70, 100 years when we finally realize is a no sense to contrast each other, to compete with each other, just join the forces and let's go to search for new planets, new places, and real estate companies will be happy to develop there instead of targeting other people's lands. So I think that's the best way to move forward.
So technology sovereignty, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. But you know what my problem is? Where does it end? You know, when you say we need our own, let's say, language models that are tailored to this region. We need our own sovereign data centers to take. At one point, you need internet. Who controls really the distribution of data globally? Who owns this? Then you have satellites now. Like I recently been in Syria, and you know the only way to get fast internet everywhere is Starlink. We all know who owns Starlink, right? And that's one of the things. And you know, I remember when I read the first time that Zuck wants to deploy internet with balloons in Africa and stuff like that, right? So it's about controlling what you consume and what you share, etc. So we cannot build the infrastructure globally that we, even if we did it collectively, let's say from Algeria to Indonesia, it's not going to work. So doesn't this mean that there is a conflict that is pre-programmed already? Because there is this big emerging conflict between China and the US about the digital control. I don't call it sovereignty anymore. The digital control of the framework that mankind uses, really.
We are touching, I think, let's say, deeper now spheres. What I can tell you for sure is that I would say the highest degree of digital sovereignty would be appreciated. I think this is something that's all the Islamic nations or Arab nations could look at. There will still be a kind of reliance. And by the way, the most sovereign, I think the most sovereign technologically and AI nation is China. And they stated that they reached the 65% of sovereignty. So we're talking about a number that is still not 100%. So when we say sovereignty, we are talking about a satisfactory amount that obviously includes the critical national infrastructure and the services that help the nation to run on its critical and most fundamental functions: defense, agriculture, telecommunication, banking, transportation, mobility, all these kind of areas. I think that we are also in a new bipolar world. So kind of the URSS, the Soviet Union, has been replaced by China. We are in the process either through the BRICS of becoming a multipolar world, which is something that I believe even the United States President Trump fundamentally believes, although he cannot admit because of the American deep state. Or it's going to lead to a different type of bipolarism, where Russia, which would be happy to go back to the, let's say, Western area of, not influence, but to the Western bloc, would play a role into the anti-Chinese expansion. Now, where the Muslims are going to be, or is going to be the role of the Ummah? If we do not understand how critical is digital and technological sovereignty, and if we do not understand what is our role in the history, who we are, who we want to be, and how important is our unity, we're just going to be like a small boat in an ocean, subject to the waves. A wave can be little, can be big, we can be overthrown. It's all subject to the piety of the foreign powers. There is no other, unfortunately, sadly, there is no other way. Must be a wake-up call for us. But on the positive note, allow me also to say, I don't want to be critical and negative. This is also an opportunity, because for every challenge there is an opportunity, and the GCC here can fuel this world AI run, not only in AI but in general, because number one has the access to the cheapest form of energy among the non-sanctioned countries. So if you exclude Venezuela, Iran, and so on. Number two is very sensitive to the green transitions. Therefore, you might have many hydrogen, green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. Green is not that yet, but blue obviously is advancing a lot. You might have many programs of CCUS that might help to reduce the GHG emissions for the energy required to power the data centers, for example. And number three, the capital power, the liquid capital power that the GCC can deploy. And we have seen the recent multi-trillion dollars investments in the US or in Italy or in France, from Qatar, from UAE, from Saudi. And those are the soft power, intelligent, I think, cards that the GCC can play. So I think everything can be built around that. So let's take the closest area of Arabs in the GCC, so the Balad al-Sham, right, the Levant. They can play a fundamental role in sharing expertise of a little bit mature market, bigger markets in terms of population, but also can support with historical lessons learned and expertise, both as producer, exporter, but also potentially as customers. At the same time, the North Africa, so all the MENA region, can be extended all the way to Asia. So around these, there is so much to do. Indonesia has actually a lot of land to place, for example, nuclear-fueled data centers for AI, or green hydrogen-fueled. Yeah. So anything like this, and of course the sky's the limit. All of this can be taken into account. But I think with every challenge comes an opportunity. The GCC is catching that, but it's not enough. We need all the Ummah around that, building and positioning itself not as country, but as a piece within the Islamic Ummah that needs to fit a purpose in the history.
Joint vision, joint execution, which means the GCC becomes the venture capitalist for the entire world. Our world, at least.
Yeah, and the
sort of, right?
And the energy provider, ideally, at least in the transition phase, by the way, because very interesting part is that I think a couple of days ago, the Ministry of Energy, or the Undersecretary of Energy of the US, it was extremely pleased with the supply and the stability of supply of Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Allow me also to specify that the fuel of the future in the transition, until we reach the fully green transition, God knows only when, is going to be LNG. So the natural gas is today the cleanest form of energy from fossil fuels that we can consider. If we consider that Europe will not go to nuclear anytime soon for political and social, historical reasons, LNG is still going to be the fuel of the world in the transition. And it's going to be liked by both the traditionalists of the industry, for industries hard to decarbonize like cement, aluminium, iron, but also by the new wave of green sensitive stakeholders.
Yeah, we have again exciting times for our region and beyond. I want to get to our closure by asking you, if I calculate now correctly, you must be 33.
I look older, but I'm
30.
30, yeah,
30. If you deleted the version of yourself now, and you have the chance to restart from scratch, what would you do differently?
Good question. I think what I fundamentally have loved to dedicate my life to serve the animal cause. I would consider myself, I just want to get what I cannot do now, right? Because now I'm trapped in many considerations we all do, like lifestyle and ambitions, anyways, by many constraints. So I would reset everything. I would cancel my LinkedIn account. I would say, okay, I want to go incognito mode. I want to dedicate my life to serve animals, to save animals. Humans do not deserve much. And I would help actually, to create fosters for Actually, my mother does this. I try to do in my free time, which unfortunately is very, very tiny. But I would dedicate my life to foster and help animals. Yeah, the animal cause.
Again, I didn't expect that. I expected many other things, but not this answer. Thank you. All right, I have 3 standard questions we always ask. Always in the context of Arabia, please.
Okay.
So, the first question is one book or any piece of media that changed your life fundamentally.
I would recommend a book, Never Split the Difference, by Christian Foss, I think is the name, which helps to negotiate. Now, we are in the region where negotiation is part of the culture. Is not, you don't negotiate because you need to get a better result, but it's part of the cultural bond.
Gives you the kick.
Yeah, exactly. So how to negotiate is fundamental, whether for your salary, whether with your spouse, for everything. A negotiation is part of our everyday. So Never Split the Difference is for sure the book I would recommend.
Okay. My next question, you sort of answered it already, but I'll still ask it. What is your $1 billion or $1 trillion company idea? It must be water.
Yeah, it must be water. I think not only in the GCC, by the way, also in Italy, we have shortage of water in Sicily. So I think, yeah, water treatment, waste management, desalination practices with non-expensive ways and low energy consumption. Definitely. There is no competition, by the way. Whoever is going to come first is going to make $1 trillion, easy funding, and a lot of, let's say, open spaces to expand.
Okay, and I have 5 questions now that I could start on, but we need to get to it. So my third question is one thing that Giorgio needs to remove right now in order to grow as a person, as a human.
Listen more.
You can't. No, you're Italian.
I can't.
Sei italiano.
Talk much, listen. Yeah. No. Listen more. More proactively. Listen more. Talk less.
I'm happy that you talked a lot today.
Except in the podcast. And I would say, to just be more patient. Those are qualities that unfortunately many Italians lack.
Yeah, especially those who want to change the world. And, I have a feeling you will. Thank you for being here, Giorgio. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Allah